Well, good afternoon again. This is a brand new episode of the Metaversal Minute, where we begin grappling with the post-Chat GPT confusion and disruption that's out there. And I've got some great guests today, my colleagues Kevin Clark and Kyle Shannon, uh, both of whom I've worked with in the past and currently. Kyle and I go way back over 25, 6 years ago, something like that.
We're getting old, young man.
So Kyle joins us from, I can't tell if it's snowing there, but from the Denver, Colorado area, where he is currently CEO and founder of Storyvine, and also most recently is the creator of the AI Artist Salon and the Everyday AI newsletter, and is really building a lot of community and great energy around how people can deal with the disruption of generative AI. And then Kevin Clark is, in full disclosure, an Ultisim board member and the president and founder of Content Evolution, of Choice Flows. He was a senior marketing person at IBM who did a lot of incredible work there, including shepherding the ThinkPad and a variety of other products there. And we're going to be digging in today to generative AI. So again, welcome everybody.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yep, it's
So
great.
why don't you guys each just, I'll start with you, Kyle. I'll start with you, Kevin. Say a little bit about, what you think has been most interesting about the generative AI disruption over the last 2 months or a couple of months, and what people should be thinking about.
Well, I think it's interesting that people think that it has burst onto the scene, right? That it's that this is new, and it's not. It's been moving in this direction for a long time. What's happened is it's kind of entered the general population's consciousness because it became readily accessible and easy to use, right? So those are usually good catalysts, right? I can tell you that I spent a lot of time trying to make tablet computers popular, and they just kept on failing until Apple, moved its, point it with your finger metaphor onto the screen. And then all of a sudden the category took off, right? Because we took the stylus out of your hand and started pointing with your finger. I think that this is the pointing with your finger moment for generative AI and machine learning. So that's happening. And I would also say that this is amazing technology. But as you said, there will be something else amazing right around the corner, right? Because look at the metaverse conversation to generative AI. Who knows what we're going to be talking about a year from now? But we need to harness this moment because it's going to change a lot of the way that we work. There's no question about that. And if you ignore it and avert your eyes, someone else is going to augment the way that they do things, and they're going to win. Right. So that's my starting position. Is we're all trying to encourage businesses to pay attention to this now, in the moment, because of the power of this. So
yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. There is we'll have some ideas for all of you in the audience around what actually you should be thinking about and doing right away with regard to what's happening out there. But Kyle, your sort of introductory thoughts.
So I one of the things that has hit me is that the parallels to when I first discovered the World Wide Web in 1994. And what I discovered,
you're the one who discovered it.
I'm the one who discovered it. No, and I personally discovered it. The epiphany I had about it was that the world had changed, but no one knew it yet. I published an online magazine. I learned enough about HTML to publish an online art and culture magazine, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I uploaded these files to this computer in California, and 3 weeks later, I got a note from someone on a dial-up bulletin board system. For those of you old enough to remember modems, that said, "Hey, Urban Desires, your zine has been written up in Liberation, the Parisian newspaper." And I was living in New York City at the time, and I remember, the following Sunday, I went down to the International Newsstand in the middle of Times Square, and I bought this paper, and I flipped it open, and sure enough, there's this full-page article about this website I did, and it just hit me that, oh my God, like geography just collapsed. And I was in the middle of Times Square, so there's just people going around me, and like what struck me in the moment was everything's different, but no one knows it yet. And so jump forward to 2022, and it was around the same time of year as that happened in 1994. I was sitting on the couch with my wife. She was watching some bad TV show, and I was playing with ChatGPT. It had just come out, and I saw a video or two that said, "Oh, you can program on it." And I was like, "Oh, write me a line in Python, or write me some code in Python." And it did that. And then I realized I don't know how to run Python. So I said, "I don't know how to run Python." And it said, "Oh, well, you go to this command line in your terminal thing." And I said, "No, I just, can I do it on a website?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, here's the website." And you paste your code in the left pane and you hit the run button. I was like, "Okay, great." So I copied the code and I put it in the thing and hit the run button, and it gave me an error. So I copied the error and I went back to ChatGPT and I said, "Here's the error." And it said, "You need to install this library." I said, "How do you install the library?" It said, "Click on this button in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, search for this library name and hit the install button." And that was the beginning of this process where ChatGPT shifted from being a parlor trick to, oh my God, this is transformative. Within 90 minutes, I had written an application that asked someone a bunch of questions about a topic and then generated a pile of social media content for them, right? In 90 minutes. I've still never written a line of Python in my life, but like that happened. So it was a similar kind of moment, like everything is different and no one knows it yet. The people in AI know it, obviously. But the general masses have no idea what's coming. So it feels like just this unstoppable force that's on us.
Right. And you guys will hear that term again here shortly when we start talking about unstoppable forces, the sort of workshop that we're putting together or have put together. But yeah, for me, it's always interesting that because of, I really don't think it's me. It's the fact that I collect people who are around these sort of inflection nodal points of technology that in 2010 is when I had the moment that you're describing right then. That's when lightning struck. I was at Microsoft Research Labs. I was there with Jaron Lanier and Alex Kipman. They were working on it was called Microsoft Natal at the time. It was Microsoft Connect. And they were using this new thing called machine learning. Again, even then, machine learning wasn't a new concept, but I'd never seen it really used in the way it was being used, which was teaching a system what a living room was and how to recognize the human body as an interface. And at that time, it took 224,000 hours of CPU time to train a system that would fit into 60 megabytes, which became the brain of the Microsoft Connect.
Wow.
But I still have all my notes from those days there, and plane ride back where I wrote a poem about it. I need to find that again, saying that, basically now the internet has eyes and ears. And once it really starts understanding what it's seeing and hearing, how is this all going to change all of us? But, I wrote an article in 2014 in TechCrunch where I said the biggest problem of the 21st century or challenge is trying to figure out the right balance between humans and automation to optimize outcomes. And that was the core concept behind Tanjo, the company that I created, where Kevin has been helping me for many years. Again, we were too early. We were using tools like BERT for chat, and that was our generative AI, natural language processing system for large language models. And we thought, well, BERT is better than GPT because it's bidirectional. But again, the number of the transforms that it had were not anywhere near. I didn't know what number was going to be the one that actually radically transforms how these systems work, but somewhere in the billions is obviously, what is it now, 175 billion transforms, and how much training is it going to take before the system becomes really useful? But even those of us who've been playing with this tech for a very long time, And I think, Kyle, you know that we used the first chat system we made in a game was with Douglas Adams
Right.
in 1996 or 97, I think, Starship Titanic. But that had a total language library of like 500. I think the whole dictionary was like 500 words or something. Um, but anyway, it really caught a lot of us by surprise. We still thought it was going to be 5 to 7 years. David Smith and I were talking about this recently. 5 to 7 years more before you could really have a satisfying conversation with a bot. Certainly, would it pass the Turing test? And I think you could really argue that at least the old style Turing test, this
Yeah.
system is already passing it. GPT-4 is about to come out, and I think we're there. And it caught a lot of us flat-footed.
Yeah, I think when ChatGPT first came out, I think the thing that caught the imagination, right? They were smart enough to not give you any options, right? It was just like the Google search bar, right? So it was this very simple input. And then, you quickly got people talking about, oh my God, it wrote a poem, or it wrote a song, or it knows coding, or it knows this. And it was this kind of magical response that with very little you got back this magical response. And I've heard it called the iPhone moment. It was just that moment where regular people started talking about it. And, this wasn't about data scientists anymore and how many billions of parameters it was. It was about, I remember some of the first things I saw in that first week after it came out were people going, I've got special dietary needs. And I asked it to make me a meal plan, and it did. And then I asked it to make me a shopping list, and it did. And then I asked it to organize it by categories of the store that I go to, and it did. And I'm going shopping. Like there was this palpable excitement about like this magic that they had just tapped into. And I think that's the thing that, like, how this thing went from, no one to 100 million users. It caught OpenAI flat-footed. They weren't expecting it. But I think it's just that unreasonable result back from minimal input, right? You didn't have to learn anything.
The conversations that are taking place right now are very similar to the New York New Media Association cyber suds events down in Manhattan, right? It's kind of like every person you bumped into had something that they were dreaming that they were going to do, all right, on the web, and they weren't the same, right? They were all different kinds of things that people were imagining, and the diversity of ideas was incredible. Right.
Yeah.
Normally, you see a lot of kind of straitjacket. Okay, look, this is what's going to happen with. This is the same kind of imaginative thinking about how could this be used generally and inside of my company or my organization. Yeah.
And it's you've got people coming from all different disciplines, all different backgrounds. And that was the thing back in 94, when Cyber Suds was going on. I started the World Wide Web Artists Consortium, which why I originally started it was I was interested in this web thing, and I'm like, I've got to meet the people that know more than I do. So I know I'll start a group, I'll start a community. And what I quickly learned is that nobody knew anything, that everyone was in the same place of like, wait, what is this thing? And, this one was an architect, and that one was a fine artist, and that one was a, businessman. And it was literally people came from, every walk of life, just trying to get their head around what this was. And that's, you mentioned the AI Artist Salon. This is the second time in my life that I've started a group like this. Once was in 94 and once was in 2022, which is the same thing. Like the only criteria is I want people to join that are curious about AI and are hungry enough to explore it, right? I think there's curious and dabble, but the people that kind of jump in, and I'm noticing the same thing. People are coming from all different walks of life, bringing all these different perspectives, and what they're thinking about, to your point, Kevin, is just this completely different visions of what this is going to be.
I think that what's interesting and compelling about that is the democratizing effect that it is having, which was the original intention of the internet, by the way, right? When the Clue Train Manifesto came out, Doc Searls and David Weinberger and those folks, and they said, this is the idea behind the internet. It's going to democratize the ability to publish to share ideas, to commune with ideas. It won't be mediated just by 3 or 4 broadcast networks that are, again, still solving for advertising in many cases. And that disintermediation is extraordinarily powerful. And that's what's happening with this. And I in that TechCrunch article I wrote in 2014, I talked about these stages of technology that I feel that we've been going through. In the first stage of the sort of information age, we humans built stuff, and then the stuff that we built changed us because we had to adapt to it. We had to learn batch commands and how to type on a keyboard and use a mouse and interact or learn to program. And that those people who became adept at those tools prospered. Sometimes people who didn't become adept or fluent with those tools didn't prosper as much. But this capability, what you're doing, especially with your AI artist salon and the other endeavors you have, is bringing everybody from all those, the architects and the engineers and the Etsy artists and all these folks together to say, like, here's how you can use it in your life, in your everyday business, and it's going to create new business ideas. And I think that's what's empowering about it. We'll get to the dark side of it in a second, but let's talk about how empowering it is, like you said, just to do what
most of the people I'm hanging out with are generally embracing the upside, right? But you read about large swaths of people who are concerned, oh, this is going to replace me, right? And I think that
it's not just
that whole replacement thing, needs to be retuned into, you need to augment the way that you work.
Yeah, I think it's. Go ahead. I was just going to say, I think that what's the relatively famous meme already is, AI is not going to replace you, but someone who using AI will, right? That the people that
humans and machines cooperating with each other.
Yeah. I think it's one of the big misnomers of AI, because it is so magical and it's generative, it's generating this stuff. A lot of times how I hear it positioned is the AI did that. But the reality is that a human being prompted the AI to do that, then curated the answer, then figured out what of that they wanted to share and refined that and then shared that, right? So it is a tool that a human used. It happens to be way more powerful than the tools we've had before, but it's still that. And I think that's an important distinction, that the more I have dug into actually using the tools, all the theoretical sort of fears and I don't know, just kind of the unreasonable things like, the robots are coming for us. It becomes a lot less scary. You realize, oh, this is a tool I can master. You also kind of learn they're very raw and they're not perfect and they do make mistakes. And so like the role of the human's still really important. So and
especially when they make intentional mistakes. And again, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah. Right? I think that the people who are best suited to taking advantage of this are the people who always, before ask better questions, right? Yeah. Because this is in the, when you get involved in this is called prompt craft, right? I think that's the general term, but I just think that the notional idea of people who are wired to be able to ask good questions are the ones who are really going to be able to take advantage of this, because they know what to ask the system that's not mundane, all right? That's generally more interesting. You're going to get more interesting results if you ask better questions.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's two sides of it. There's the questions, the prompts, but there's also the general capability inside of machine learning is called the utility function, right? Which is what are you trying to create it to solve for? And right now it's solved for pleasing the prompter, right? Just like, Google search is really designed to increase more ad revenue. It's really not to just help us find the best content every time. It's the best ad mediated content. And, we have to be very, very careful about what are the utility functions being created, because like I said, you as the prompter start guiding the system through to a new utility function or a sub utility function. That's why a New York Reporter is very successful, in creating racist or xenophobic or even malicious responses from the system, because if you keep prompting it in that direction, it will go, oh, I think I understand what you're trying to do. And if because basically the system is just doing statistical inference of the next set of words that the utility function wants to hear.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, it is very easy right now to get these tools to give you, headline generating results, right? And I think that's, hackers are going to hack, reporters are going to report. Like reporters are going to go for sensational things. And I don't even necessarily know that Kevin Roose was trying to go for, sensational, but he definitely was pushing it, right? And at some point it kind of snapped and did that. The other thing that struck me is that, and this wasn't the case back in the 90s with the web, is that we have, however long it's been, since the 1950s or 60s, Hollywood representations of AI. AI is never the good guy, right? AI always takes over. So we have this cultural.
Would you like to play a game?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, Hal, I'm afraid I can't do that, right? So I think we have this sort of fairly deep, cultural bent toward these things are bad, right? And so, I think the only antidote to that is to actually use them, because it's very easy to dismiss them as not perfect or to demonize them as, this is bad, and I'm going to avoid that. Right, you get into copyright issues and trademark. Really easy to demonize it there, or it's not perfect. I'm gonna dismiss it there. And I think all of that dismissal and demonization is done at the peril of the person kind of ignoring this tsunami that's coming.
I mean, one of the key things behind this, because you were unpacking that very nicely, is one of my favorite words, which is intention and intentionality, right? Mm-hmm. What is your intention in terms of using this, all right? And if you're trying to use it maliciously, all right, you can get it to please you, all right, in terms of having a malicious outcome, as opposed to, if you're trying to enable your organization to do something better than it could do, all right, before, do it faster, more efficiently, or perhaps, give you a first draft of something that's, more imaginative because it's drawing from a larger, source of data. That's positive intentionality, right? And so people need to figure out, how am I going to use it, right? And I'm sure there are some, white hats that can do a great job, and the black hats are going to drive us crazy.
Well, and drive us crazy, and maybe do some real damage, right? Yeah. So
before we get into the dark side of all this, because we do have to go there, and within the time allotment that we have, but let's talk about some of the more empowering things that are happening. I'll add one, and then each of you can, and I want you to talk more about AR to Salon and how people can participate in that, Kyle. But one of the things that we talked about at Tanjo for a while when we first started playing with this tech is we said, hey, this is the new scientific method. And this was 5, 6, 7 years ago, where we said there's now a new step in the scientific method. So it's instead of a human coming up with an hypothesis and then designing 4 or 5 experiments and then getting to thesis and synthesis, instead what you do is you say, hey, machine, come up with every hypothesis that might find merit in this area, whether I'm trying to discover a new drug or thinking about climate change or whatever. And it would posit all of these things. Now, a lot of those things were what we call it, hallucinations that might seem speciously true, but aren't. And so the human has to come in and say, not that, not that, not that. But that's really interesting. It didn't even occur to me that might be an avenue. So go deeper on that. And then you watch as it iterates on that in that area. And that's incredibly empowering. And I think, again, that's what we're seeing today, even I've got another company, Ultisim, that's designing games for education. And now what we do is we don't just sit around and whiteboard with just humans anymore. Right. We start by using prompts to say, dream up a couple of things here, dream up some images for me, Dolly, and ChatGPT or something like it that we're using. Please come up with a story idea and some puzzles and some gameplay, and start putting all that together. And let's choose among the things that we want to combine. And that really does accelerate the design process quite a bit. So those are empowering things. So now one of you go next with something else empowering before we go dark.
I'll go empowering. On the same evening that I wrote that Python program, one of my first experiments was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years back. I came up with an idea for a card game, one of those card games you play that where you've got good guys and bad guys, and around UFO disclosure, right? It was about aliens and UFOs and things like that. And I got decently far. I created a spreadsheet and I came up with 40 or 50 different card ideas. Like, here's different kinds of aliens and different kinds of spaceships and different kind of government entities. And, being a card carrying member of the ADHD club, I got 40 or 50 done, and about a third of those were decently well researched. And a third, I just wrote in some ideas, and a third were blank. And so I was playing around with ChatGPT, and I said, let me just see what this can do. And so I kind of grabbed what I had in that spreadsheet and just pasted it into ChatGPT. And after a little bit of back and forth with prompt crafting, within about 30 minutes, maybe 45, I had 300 fully researched cards in a day, in a spreadsheet of all these different categories, stuff I had no idea what was there. And then I realized, oh, wait, I could probably take the description of what's on the card and generate an image for that. So I created a spreadsheet that automatically generated images for every card, based on the description of the card. That was within 30 to 45 minutes. So the meta thing that I've experienced consistently over and over again is that what used to be relatively significant barriers to creative ideation. Sometimes it would be, I don't know how to use a tool. Like, I'd see a tool on YouTube and I'm like, oh, I want to go learn Blender because I want to make cool 3D stuff. And then 45 minutes later, I'm still trying to install Blender and I can't get it to run, and I need to install this library, right? Well, the creative spirit is gone. And what I'm finding with these tools is I kind of have a flash of an idea. And when I interact with these tools, it kind of it knocks that 80% of sort of blocking and tackling of the idea generation out like that. And then, so it allows me to kind of stay in the creative zone because it's doing kind of all this tactical stuff down below. And it just allows me to kind of operate at a higher creative level, longer, more consistently, and much more quickly, to your point. Instead of 4 or 5, hypotheses, you have 400 or 500, right? And it's just a totally different game.
And do you want to run 8 experiments, or do you want to run 10 to the 8th?
Right.
That's the next bit of it. Yep.
So I'll just say that what this is doing is it's an invitation to business metaphysics, right? Mm-hmm. Which is what is actually real, all right, about your current business strategy and model. And, this is, happening so fast that in addition to what generative AI can bring to the table, it causes you to rethink some other things. I think that most organizations, most job descriptions need to be sunsetted, right? And you need to rethink, right? Every person, what tool set does this person, have or should be working with? Not necessarily this, what we're discussing today, but it could be a platform, or it could be, another. There's just so much more that's out there. And so you need to just rethink, especially if somebody's leaving the organization through retirement or, taking another opportunity, is, do I actually want to hire the same person, the same job description, or do I want a hybrid of a person that's in that role but has these skills and can use these tools, right, to accomplish that and be more powerful coming in? I think that this is the invitation. The invitation is rethink foundationally, how are you doing things and what is the core of your business? Honestly, you are both helping me and my core organization, Content Evolution. This is the evolution of content. After 21 years of existence, it's growing into its name very rapidly, right? Yeah. And because we're rethinking foundationally, so how does this federation of organizations work with each other and deliver value? It's kind of amazing. We're doing the same thing with Storyvine. We're doing the same thing with Ultisim right now. It's an incredible moment, and you have this. You're being given permission to step back, to dolly up and out and say, what are we doing? What and how can we do it better? Right? Given, what this is demonstrating right in front of us.
What you just said, Kevin, that what it triggers for me, you talked about, someone else I talked to, Janice Jertson, who said, every CEO should just go fire everyone and then immediately rehire them and figure out, what they do. And part of it is the tools. What tools are they going to use? But I almost think of it like this: how do they think? Right? Because I feel like the new skill with these tools is critical thinking, right? So if you've got someone who's very process oriented, they might use a completely different set of tools than someone who's, creative and ideation focused. And so I think it potentially gives organizations the opportunity to reconsider people not based on job description. It's almost like job descriptions, flush them down the toilet. Because if anything that is mundane and repeatable is going to be automated, and I think that's the promise here, most jobs in most organizations are mundane, repeatable crap, right? So if you say, let's assume that mundane, repeatable stuff is going to be automated, then what's left? What's left is critical thinking, how you think, how you problem solve.
Creative thinking. Yeah.
Right. So if you could just engage with your organization in that way and say, okay, how do you think about solving this problem? Now let's go figure out what tools to do. And then, I think
how to work in human machine teams to critically
problem
solve.
Exactly.
The organization actually becomes more human as the result of jettisoning the machine repetitive like tasks, right?
I think we are entering a great renaissance right now. I think human connection, authenticity, and creative expression. There's going to be an explosion of it right now. So as opposed to these machines make pictures, they're going to take away our creativity. I think it's the complete opposite. I think these tools are going to amplify our creativity, and we're going to need to reconnect to figure all of these challenges out.